All right, friends, it's going to take more than technology to slow down this show as Stokastic. You know how it is. College football gets around, we get serious. We went to the ends of the earth to make this show happen. Really not true. But I'm in charge now, so who knows what we're going to get. Just joining us for the first time. College football live before lock, presented by Bet365. I'm Ben Rasa. Matt Gajewski joins me, sir. We're in the thick of it. Every week, we get new casualties of the college football playoff. We get teams that are closer to punching your ticket. And it's no different today. Penn State, Ohio State, other random teams, Pittsburgh, SMU, a lot to talk about. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's always kind of weird when you have an elite game in real life, but it means almost nothing for DFS because the total's really low. But a lot of times that's what happens in these Big Ten showdowns. So yeah, luckily that game is the premier showdown of the day. So maybe we'll spend a little extra time for those of you playing that. But yeah, hope you get to enjoy the game from a viewing perspective, but not really much to say for DFS on the good old Penn State, Ohio State matchup.
No, that's not the one. And we get, I assume you feel the same way about the battle of the academies. We got Army and Air Force on the slate. That's got to be, I don't honestly know the total, but it's got to be in the high 30s, low 40s.
Yeah, since Coleman was named the starter, Daly out with the foot infection, that has cratered 5 points, the line, and the total's down 4 points from like 30 minutes ago. So yeah, here we go. Get ready for the grease. This is not the run out that DraftKings was expecting when they put Army on the slate. Kind of a mess for them. But I like it. Not teams we normally see. Memphis, UTSA, unless they're playing on a weekday, don't normally see them. So it's kind of a weird slate, a unique slate, and as usual, full of injuries, maybe more so than any other slate this year.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. So let's get right into it. What are we waiting for? What news has dropped? Who's in, who's out? What are the status of the big injuries?
Coleman starting for Army in place of Daly is the biggest one. Daly was going to be pretty chalky, but now there's just a lot of moving parts, and I'm not sure how the field's going to react. This was 21.5 points in favor of Army this morning. It's now 18. The total's down from 41 to 38. And we're moving from an absolute wagon, a guy who has he's never going to win the Heisman, but he has decent Heisman odds because Army has beat the snot out of 6 really easy teams, 7 easy teams. I forget how many games they played. But now you go to Coleman, who's operating the same exact offense, but with less efficiency. So we'll see. He's very, very expensive. That's the biggest one we've gotten so far. We're waiting on Trey Harris. Rumors are he's going to play in a limited capacity. That's where we have him projected right now, which brings Caden Lee, Antwain Wells, Jordan Watkins all into play at cheap prices. The sneakiest situation is UTSA. David Amador is suited up, I believe, for the first time this year. If not, maybe the second time this year at wide receiver. And we're waiting on the status of Devin McEwen, who was promoted to questionable after he missed the last 2 games. We were expecting him to miss. That might ruin 3 or 4 3K receivers we were considering on this slate. We don't know if Amador is going to make his debut. We don't know if McEwen's warming up. That will come hopefully in the next 10 minutes or so. Their beat reporter is on it, so we should get that news.
Let's get right into it. Let's get into quarterbacks. Obviously, we've got some big names on the slate, no doubt about it. If you want to pay for the Cam Wards of the world, you could do just that. But I honestly want to stick with what you just talked about. Does Coleman slide right in, or does it render him as a non-playable option on a slate like this?
I don't think he slides right in.
Okay.
With the total cratering, the spread cratering, the efficiency. Daly was almost at 7 yards per carry. Coleman is at 4.1. A small sample, of course. Their O-line is still awesome. So maybe it doesn't matter and he can slide right in. But I would rather maybe spread myself out a little bit here. And there's a lot of good QBs. Well, not a lot. There's some good QBs. So I don't know if you should be really just taking that risk and sliding him right in. I think people will do that, people that panic, but we'll see on this. I don't anticipate. I was already light to Daly because of the alternatives. I don't anticipate that changing with Coleman.
What about let's get Cam Ward out of the way, because then we'll get to the chalk guys, and there are some. But Cam Ward, he's nearly $11,000. They're almost a 3-touchdown favorite at home. I'm no fan of Duke. You're not a fan of Duke. But are we really looking to allocate that much salary to Cam Ward today?
I think you absolutely can. There's a ton of value. So if you want to go up to Cam Ward, by all means, their pass rate is nearly 55%. They've they're undefeated. So clearly game script has not been an issue for that pass rate. You can play Cam Ward. I think there are alternatives, but if he's your guy, that's going to be your contrarian stand. He's an awesome player in general. You're just allocating a lot of salary.
Now let's get to the chalk option. I would assume that you're going to tell me that Rocco Beck belongs in your cash lineup. He's a really good price point. He projects really well. Is that what you're seeing, or do you see something different out there?
I think he's the best quarterback play on the slate with the makeshift Texas Tech defense on the other side. We talk about this a lot, how injured they are. A lot of those guys were out for the season, so it's not going to get any better. Their implied team total is 35. The only real risky worry is Texas Tech not remaining competitive. It's kind of on that border. Iowa State's a 13.5-point favorite, and they will run the snot out of the ball when game script permits. Last year, they had like a 55% pass rate. So when it's tight, when they are behind, which isn't likely, they're going to throw the ball a lot. Their two best players on offense are both at receiver. They just haven't needed to use them through a pretty easy schedule to this point. But for cash games, he's just too cheap. You can play him certainly on DraftKings. He's still even in play on FanDuel at 10-5. I know we'll circle back to FanDuel. He's not quite as strong there, but he's still pretty strong.
If he's 1A, is Hennigan 1B, or do you see a different distribution as we get down into kind of that mid-range quarterback rankings?
I think he's 1B right now, especially with Daly off the board. That game just has a monster total, tons of back and forth. And defense, especially on the UTSA side, shouldn't really be there. Their team total is 34. UTSA is going to pace them up. They're 8th. Memphis doesn't always play fast, but got two teams with a 55% pass rate. Hennigan hasn't run as much this year, but we know that's in his bag, and he's averaging 38 pass attempts per game. Just pretty hard to get away from him at 7,600. I do think in cash you're probably starting with either Hennigan or Becht and probably getting both. The only guy that you might consider is McCown on the other side, and it's basically just like a game script thing.
Looking at other quarterbacks kind of just bouncing around, we've got like Avery Johnson's on this slate, Carson Beck, an interesting matchup against Florida. Jackson Dart, maybe they get tripped up in Fayetteville. I mean, are these guys filling out kind of that portfolio of QBs in tournaments? And then I'm going to throw one more at you. Are you going to Aiden Childs at all? Because he is very cheap, but he also, you told me I'm betting you, he is going uncharted territory for turnover-worthy plays this year.
Yeah, sadly, I can't run anything right now, or at least I'm choosing. It would be a waste of time to really run anything until we get the Trey Harris news, the UTSA news. So I don't know where I'm going to fall on these guys. I will likely play some Childs, but I don't think you need to get crazy with him. There's another cheap option in Lagway who I would like to spread between the two of them. And that's only in the really, really cheap quarterback builds, which I don't think you need to do. There's a lot of value on this slate, so it's not necessary. But if you want to sprinkle some of these guys, Childs actually has awesome efficiency metrics if you were to just remove the turnover-worthy plays. He can run a little bit. He is over 8 yards per attempt, but he leads the country by 6 in turnover-worthy plays, which for DFS, as Jameis Winston has taught us, the great Jameis Winston, that's not always a bad thing.
No, can be an asset because you favor your own game script if you don't get yanked.
I don't think he will.
No, I don't either.
Smith recruited him. He was like the crown jewel of that Oregon State class before Smith moved over to Michigan State. Childs obviously followed him. They don't have any alternatives. So what are you going to put in? So yeah, he should be pretty safe, even if he were to have like a Kyle McCord game where he throws 5 picks. I don't think it matters. Lagway is really talented in the same situation, just facing probably a better defense. I'm not sure. Indiana is an awesome defense, so maybe it's kind of like the same situation, Childs versus Indiana. Georgia's a little better, but Florida's also a little better, so it's still going to be a tough matchup for them both. They're just really cheap. And in the end, they're tournament plays. You don't need to do this. If you're playing like 150 or something, that's where I think you can start sprinkling the cheap QBs. Otherwise, not really a necessity.
Chat, see, you guys are on it because I asked about this dude on Betting You, and I'm going to circle back to him. UCF last week got blown out by BYU. They brought in a straight creative player at quarterback late in that game. Do you know the status? Because they're a pretty decent favorite at home in the bounce house against Arizona. Do you know the status of the UCF quarterback situation? Are they going to give this guy the nod, or are they going back to some of the guys they already circled through?
Right now, we're guessing they give him the nod, but
I like this guy, Dylan Rizek. Shout out to him.
The problem is they played so many games that you're kind of, I don't know, making a bet that I'm not super comfortable with. They named EJ Colson the starter a few weeks back, and then they just played Ja'Cory Brown for almost the whole game. They keep giving Colson some snaps, and we haven't seen a lot of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some sort of platoon between the two. If there is a bad play, I don't think you see a long leash for Rizek. And this guy was 4th on the depth chart for a reason. And I'm not going to say whatever they're doing to evaluate QBs, I'm not going to come out here and say, oh, they're doing a good job. Clearly they're not. They've cycled through 4 of them so far this year. What I'm trying to say is it comes with risk. And if you're comfortable taking that and you think he does play a whole game, absolutely. He'd be a great play. This offense is kind of tailor-made for QBs that can rush, which he seems to be able to do a little bit, but I just don't really have any confidence in this coaching staff. And they seem to be evaluating guys. I'm just not fully sure what they're doing right now.
Let's bring in the big guns from FanDuel, because you go over there, you got some dudes. You got Klubnik, you got Jennings, even your boy. I know you're on Arizona State today in the betting side. We'll talk about that as well. What do you make of that? How different is the QB allocation over there today?
That I have built. Let me pull it up. I'm trying to work through some UTSA projection stuff. It is different.
McCune looks like he's out, apparently.
He's out. Amador looks like he's in, and some other guy that I'm not really expecting to play is in. But I'm a little more spread, or at least I ran my DraftKings stuff initially, and it's going to be different likely, but ended up pretty spread on FanDuel without any sort of alterations. Beck still being the most owned, but I got some Alan Bowman, some Sam Levitt, Tyler Shugg. Cam Ward was 5th, then Taylor Green, Fafita. FanDuel's pretty efficiently priced at QB specifically, in my opinion. Like you get Klubnik way up at 11.8, Dylan Gabriel at 11. And then you get some quarterbacks that have disappointed, but are in pretty solid offenses overall, or at least have shown some flashes, like Bowman at 8,600. He's played just well enough where that price tag is like, oh, maybe you could consider him against Arizona State, or Levitt because he runs, even though he's coming off the injury. Like Shugg has a pretty good role, but he's playing Clemson, 9,600, somewhat enticing. So I think they did a great job with every quarterback, and that kind of goes all the way down to Childs at 7,200, where he saves you enough salary. You can build a lineup with some stud running backs or whomever you like go up to Taj Brooks and Cam Scatabo in those kind of builds. So FanDuel's kind of wide open at QB, but I still think Becht is the best.
No doubt about it. Anything else from the FanDuel side of things?
I don't think so. I'm going to push a UTSA update right now. Not a ton change. It's just kind of a little bit of work to Amador, taking away from the other dusty receivers.
Yes. And again, even though, like I said, I'm in control of this, so bear with the production value, but you guys see right here, I'm in the data hub. All of this stuff is available. We have the tools that our team has made is just second to none. Just fantastic. You can get this for college football. You can get this for other sports. I'll talk about how you can do the link join. You get a free month of any of the sports core value just for signing up with one of our partners. That'll be a little later in the show, but I just want to give the data hub a shout out. Let's talk about running backs. Back to DraftKings we go. We'll go to this running back situation right off the bat. You see some of the big names there. We've talked about UCF a little bit already. Is that where your eyes are kind of drawn in terms of salary? You've got a guy like Harvey, or is it, Mario Anderson, ETN in a good game script? What are your just initial thoughts on running back today?
Those players are all good, and there's a lot of options you can get to. I think you're going to see Anderson be pretty chalky, and I think it comes with some risk. Greg DeRosier is warming up again today. He did so yesterday. They kind of used Anderson in a bell cow workload because they had to. You go back like 3 games, he had 6 carries. Brandon Thomas at 12. No word on his status yet. But then Thomas and DeRosier were hurt in the same game, so then Anderson went up to 22 carries. Last game, he had 32. Perfect game script and no alternatives really. So I think you're buying him at his ceiling. With that said, even if those players are back in some capacity, the price isn't correct. So there's ways he still gets there, even if the workload's not quite what you think it is. So he's a solid play. Harvey, I think, is a little expensive for my liking. Always worried about anyone pulling the plug on a UCF player at this point. Their season is lost. So what they did at quarterback, could they maybe do that at running back with Harvey? I don't think it's likely, but potentially. They did it with Penny Boone, which was warranted. He sucks. But yeah, I mean, who was the other guy you mentioned?
I ran through a bunch of names. I'm gonna kind of circle back to the high owned guys that we have projected right now. You got Mario Anderson, Trevor Etienne, Giddens, RJ Harvey. If you want to pay up, I mean, do you see yourself mostly paying up at running back? Is it a combination? Because most of the guys I'm looking at, it doesn't seem like there's the crazy values on the board.
It's mostly paying up. Yeah, there are a couple values I think you could get to. We talked on Harvey, I guess. So from there, I actually have mostly Taj Brooks, or at least most of him, at 8,200 in that matchup that we already kind of briefly mentioned against Iowa State. His role is awesome. Some Giddens, he's a better play on FanDuel in my opinion, but still firmly in play on DraftKings. He's going to come with a decent amount of ownership. They're playing, I mean, just a cupcake matchup. They should run all over Houston. I think Darius Taylor is fine. He's one of my favorite GPP plays. He's not being used quite like last year when you saw him basically in like a pounder rule. They've raised their pass rate like nearly 20%. They're above 50%, but his pass game role is awesome. He has at least 4 targets and 4 straight. Etienne is an awesome play, basically by any metric. Their 2 primary backups are hurt. He's 6,500. They're playing Florida as a 2-touchdown favorite. Florida's run defense is fine, but it's not imposing. So he just kind of fills that price void where in the mid-range, he's going to be the one that pops. Not sure where I'm going to come in on these guys. I'm going to run another one right now through the Sims, see what I get. But I had quite a bit of ETN before my first one.
In terms of pay down options, just going to throw a couple names at you if you're looking for cheapies. So you've got Justice Ellison. He's 5,200, takes on Michigan State. You've got Josh McCray, sub 4K. I mean, are you looking to say maybe I can get away with doing something like that, even Fletcher for Miami? Or are you saying, you know what, it's just not enough upside for those type of players?
If you're playing 150, I think you can. If not, I'm probably not doing it. McCray lost a ton of work to Lawfrey last week because McCray stinks. And Lawfrey is at least kind of an unknown. So who knows where that backfield comes in. Fletcher is in a 50-50 committee with Martinez. I guess you could play that. They have a high enough team total and they're favored by 3 scores. So I'm not really super worried about Fletcher. And who was the last one you mentioned?
McCray, Fletcher, Ellison.
Ellison's fine. You're just riding the hot hand with Indiana. They have a different back lead that committee every single week. I think it's largely between him and Tyson Lawton, but Kalen Black will play a change of pace for that team as well. But I think you can go there. The Arkansas backs are somewhat interesting. Braylon Russell's kind of in another timeshare. He would be another name to mention down there. Otherwise, the UTSA backs, Robert Henry, he'll lead a committee for them. That just is an awesome game environment. You could punt down there. Jaden Baugh would be in play if Montreal Johnson misses this game. I think he does, but he's questionable. He has not been ruled out. He had 22 carries in the last game for Florida without Montreal Johnson. Some more news you'll have to wait on, which is kind of the story of this slate. It's a lot of this is injury dependent, which as you can tell, that's why my lineups are not finalized right now.
One other guy I wanted to ask you, because I want to go back up before we move to FanDuel, kind of do a pseudo rank 'em. And it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, that you would have it Brooks over Taylor over James. Is that how you see it in the low 8K range?
I think so.
Okay.
But with Brooks, it was largely just he's not. I guess the Sims are telling me this, and this isn't like a hot take I have. He's not as owned as he should be for his role. So that's what I think is primarily driving it. I don't know if he has the best game out of those guys, but for his ownership, I think he's worth taking a shot there.
Anything else on the the DraftKings running back room?
Let me pull.
A lot of people are asking about Carson Hansen.
I just got through a run, so let me look through this now.
Yeah, let's see what we got.
Okay, so a couple guys we didn't talk about. Kanye Udo does get a slight bump. The extra work we gave him was somewhat mitigated by the total crashing, the spread crashing, but I did get a little bit more of him, and that makes sense. Air Force is absolutely atrocious.
It's bad.
If you're using an optimizer, I would make sure to not play Udo and Coleman together, especially in tournaments. The total's really low, but you could see them exceeding their team total by some degree. So I think playing some of them is fine. Mentioned Braylon Russell. They're in a pretty tough matchup, but he's 3,500. You can play him. I got some Quayle Conley. I always struggle with him because Kedrick Riscano's been more involved lately. The Arizona offense is completely inept, so I might bring him down in favor of some other guys. As far as the Hansen thing goes, he's coming off an injury, so I'm not sure. Iowa State runs the hot hand at running back. He's been the hottest of the three, but they've had basically a different lead ball carrier most games this week. Last week, Abu Sama rose from the grave, and he had the most carries among this backfield. Not the most competitive spot, so I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jalen Jackson. I have a little of all three. Emphasis on a little. It's under 5%. You're just battling a three-way committee. That's about it, I think.
Let's go to FanDuel and see what we got over there. Make the switch right here in the old data hub and Scatabo. Sampson. Big time backs. Desmond Reed, even though he will be stifled by the SMU front. You heard it here first. Talk about taking it to your grave. But what do you see with some of these, big time running backs that weren't available for us on DraftKings?
I think my favorite's actually Jonah Coleman at price. There's just absolutely no reason this guy should be 7,300 there. And maybe this is just a coaching thing. I'm not sure. I think every running back should have success against USC's front. That hasn't been the case. I think largely by ineptitude, like what Penn State did against USC, I will never understand. But I love Jed Fish, and I think he'll realize this. And even if he doesn't, I'm not sure it matters because Coleman can catch passes. Coleman is an enormous back, so he has all of the goal line equity to himself. The only player that really steals anything on the goal line is Damon Williams, their freshman quarterback, who they use as a situational dual threat. He really opens things up at running back, so he is currently my most owned. I don't plan on adjusting anything on FanDuel. Ollie Gordon, I have some of him. He's questionable, but I think he plays. He did an interview where the whole premise of the interview was not quitting on the season, so I think you see him. Isaac Brown on that slate is also cheap. I prefer Jonah Coleman straight up, but you could use him. Woody Marks has an excellent role. Then Phil Maffa's on the slate. I always try to get some Phil Maffa. Clemson's been absolutely battering teams. Other than that, the other elite studs I think you can sprinkle are Jordan James. Reed would need to get there on pass catching. This is like Pitt's lowest implied team total of the season. So he projects poorly price adjusted because he's all the way up at 10-6. It's kind of the same thing with Sampson. He's just very, very expensive. And his role is awesome, but you get Scatabo with the better game metrics overall. With Sampson, you actually have to worry about a blowout against Kentucky today. Kentucky has so many injuries on defense. I think they're down 6 starters. We saw Selden return for Tennessee in the last game. So there's a little bit of risk there where I prefer Scatabo just 1-for-1, but I think you could spread that between the two if you want to take away some of your risk. They both have one of the best roles in the entire country. But I think that just about does it for FanDuel and the differences.
You may have talked about him briefly. I just want to clarify it with SMU in general. The Jennings situation is a little banged up. Do you think that there's a way that Brashard Smith just really, really carries that offense?
I forgot about him. He is in my pool.
Okay.
Skipped right over him. He's right after Desmond Reed in the backs that I have in my portfolio. I have a question, and I don't know if there's going to be an answer on this. In their third most recent game and second most recent game, his role was depressed. He went, let's just go back 4 games, 17 carries to 13 to 8, back up to 25. I'm like asking myself if this was an injury that maybe we didn't know about or something, because they had been using Roderick Daniels, a converted wide receiver, and he still plays some of that. He's like a Deebo Samuel for SMU. He'd been running the ball. He had 15, 6, 9 carries, and then he went down to 1. But his targets didn't really change, and his routes didn't change. So was it Brashard Smith banged up why they were using Daniels in the backfield? I don't know. There is just some volatility between that situation. So he could, second most recent game, he had 8 carries, and then he went up to 25. You can play him because the 25 is in his bag. We've seen it a couple times this year, but it's not like, I don't know, Dylan Sampson, whose floor is kind of 25 touches,
I get it. Yeah, and it's weird because some of those games were not, like the Louisville game was in there. There were some competitive games for them in there.
Yeah, they've done this a lot this year. I wonder if it's like the hot hand, but when you're taking a receiver and putting him over at running back, that's when I get a little confused. We'll talk about another team doing that, maybe. Is TCU on the FanDuel slate? No, they're on the DraftKings night slate. Never mind. We won't talk about TCU.
Appreciate the super chat. Favorite low-owned QB and running back. Let's see what we can find here.
How low you want to get?
Yeah, that's also a good question. Obviously, there are levels to like someone else just brought up Brosmer, who has improved. I mean, he's only gonna make a couple percent. I'll be honest. I'm willing to take. I think this UCF guy is going to play well, and if he plays well, they're not going to pull him off the field. If he gets the start and he's only a couple percent owned, I don't think it's crazy to roll out this Rizek character.
I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be under 5% today.
That's pretty wild.
All the guys we mentioned, the total's not good in the game, but we've seen Michigan we've seen Michigan's defense give up like 40 burgers. Their best corner, All-American Will Johnson's out again. Dylan Gabriel is up there. He's like a top 3 most efficient QB in the country. So yeah, he doesn't project well. That's largely stemming from the total in the game, but they have absolutely nuclear upside. And he's only 9,100. It's like Cam Ward is 10.8. So if you were to just make that pivot down to Gabriel, you're saving a lot of salary. You're saving ownership. So he's one I mentioned. I mean, if you want to get super, super greasy, Baron Morton's probably going to be like 1% today. They run an air raid offense, pivot off Taj Brooks in the Iowa State chalk, but that's really greasy.
Yeah, that's a little extreme. I hear you, though. We got options, no doubt about it, and we got some so it looks like Trey Harris is...
Oh, I was supposed to do running back, right? I only answered half the question.
Yeah, running back, I mean...
Sorry.
No. I was looking at running back, too. Running back, you could get some pretty good guys that aren't going to be... Like, you want to stick with Oregon, Jordan James is not going to be popular.
I think... Taj Brooks is my favorite. He's not way off the board, but I think he'll probably be around 10%, and our ownership backs that up. I mean, if you're looking for like a 1% play or something below 5, Henry Parrish for Ole Miss is not going to be owned at all today. He's someone I would look to against Arkansas's defense, which is a little improved largely because they returned some guys, but they're still not that good. Even with like Ulysses Bentley back in the fold, Parrish has still very clearly dominated that backfield. So he'd be another guy to throw in there for tournaments.
Trey Harris not in warmups.
Man, are you serious?
Trey Harris not dressed, at least.
God, I'm going to have like 10 minutes to build.
Well, it's going to be a scene, man. While you start to sort that out, I'm going to mention a couple of things.
Thanks,
One,
Ben.
we had a Millie winner last week. Not only do we have that, I'm taking a victory lap. You can check the tape. On Sunday Live Before Lock, I said someone from the Stokastic family was going to win the Millie, and that happened. So, of course, we're obviously excited. But we want to make it an excitement for everyone. We are running a promo. The code is MILL, M-I-L-L. You can get 30% off any NFL DFS package. It's pretty simple. In the description, it's going to say what I just said. Get 30% off any NFL DFS package. You go there, you put in that code MILL, and you are in business. We all want to celebrate what is just, when you get a Millie winner, I don't care what you're doing. That is just obviously the top of the top. Doesn't happen all the time. Just an awesome thing. Everything connected. So shout out to that and take advantage of it. Promo is there for you. We are going to start the breakdown of wide receivers. So we've got plenty to go there. We've got some alphas on the slate. Anytime you see McMillan at the top, it's no surprise. This is a guy that, I mean, Arizona has built their whole team around him, and he's $8,600. Again, expensive, but it's warranted. Then you've got guys like Tez Johnson from Oregon. We know about Harris. Looks like he's going to be a no-go. Jeremiah Smith against this Penn State secondary. What can he do? Restrepo in a huge favorite. Ibuka, his counterpart against the Nittany Lions. Higgins, Armstrong, Bryant, Rock Taylor, Josh Kelly. A ton of guys in the 6K range that we can break down. But to me, let's start getting into it with that top guy. Do you think McMillan now is even more solidified if you have value because there's not as many options up there? And do you like to go to him? You've mentioned in the past to me, you take him away, you take away the entire offense.
That's true. He still has big games because they need to force feed him the ball. And I'm just pushing the Ole Miss update right now. You hit on something that might cause you to get more. We just have like 4 Ole Miss 3K guys now.
Yep.
That I assume are probably going to populate lineups, especially with a little more risk in the UTSA situation. Maybe that allows you to get more of Ted McMillan. If it does, I still would caution against getting over your skis because of the risk of another team just putting 2 guys on them and the entire offense imploding. It's happened multiple. It happened against an FCS team. But there's options. You mentioned like Tez for Oregon. Maybe their ownership comes up now that we have less alternatives, but I mean, he's there and their team total is not high. So he wasn't super owned to begin with. Maybe it's a little bit different now. The Ohio State guys are in a very tough matchup against Penn State. At least the implied team total would indicate that. So yeah, it's kind of tough up top, not to mention this is a slate where you have a lot of value, and that was before Ole Miss opened up. Now we'll have to see where this comes in, but maybe it's just so cheap that you get a stud naturally. But prior to this, I was getting more of like, and this is why you could get Cam Ward. This is why you could go up and play like RJ Harvey. There was enough receiver value where maybe it pushes you just more to the expensive running backs or the expensive QBs. We'll see where it settles, but I think you could play them as contrarian options. But the strength of wide receivers definitely, once you get cheaper. And part of that is 2 guys you mentioned who aren't in the elite pricing tier, but Higgins and Noel for Iowa State. The 2 best players on that offense, they project off the charts. Their props are both like above 75 yards. They come in north of that on our projections. I mean, it's literally like 75% of the targets are going to those 2 guys, especially with Brahmer banged up. I think he's going to play here, which is the guy's a warrior. He got hurt in their last game and was on crutches, but he's been saying he'll be out there. Even if he's limited, like you might just see more targets condensed between those 2 players. And part of the reason why is they're throwing out a 12 personnel and they're not using their tight ends a lot on routes, especially with Brahmer off the field. So they're playing out of this base set where you don't have a lot of receiving options, or at least they're choosing not to use them because of the offense they're playing. You just don't have guys to throw to. It's literally just Higgins and Noel on the field every play. That works for them because they're the 2 best players. But yeah, you kind of see my point. These are 2 elite plays in the slate, and that's another reason why you weren't getting a lot of Tet and stuff at the top. Like in some situations, you just have a better raw projection if you go down and play the Iowa State guys.
Are you okay with a Beck +2?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And that again, think of it like early in the year before Miami and the Dolphins sucked. Like if you played and pricing worked out, like if you played Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle, you were getting like 75% of the targets, 70% of the targets for that team. That's what Iowa State's like.
We're going to definitely get to these Ole Miss guys. I want to kind of connect them by asking you about what I thought could have been some of the pay down options. Are they killed now? And I'm referring to Loveland, to Marsh for Michigan State, even Zachary Franklin. Do you think you'll see less of those type of players because now we might be able to YOLO with some of the dirt cheap Ole Miss players?
For sure. A couple of them you mentioned. Loveland, I'm getting through my first run right now with this news, but I wasn't super in love with him. There's just so much systemic risk with Michigan. You know, like you play an Ole Miss receiver. Ole Miss's offense is live to score like 35 points in every game. It's going to take Michigan 3 games to score that many points. So you just don't have the touchdown upside with Loveland. His target share is gnarly, but they're not throwing the ball. And like the UTSA guys the Amador thing scared me a little bit. Who were some of the other ones you mentioned? Sorry, I'm building.
No. Like Marsh, that's a guy that, I don't know. I mean, 4K for Michigan State.
I actually like Marsh. He had like nearly 100% route share. He's their 4-star freshman. And credit to Smith, like he knows his receivers stink. Like when Monterey Foster's your number 1, your receiving core just stinks. So I kind of see this as like a Luther Burden freshman season. Like just get Marsh as many snaps as you possibly can so he's good down the road when you're actually ready to compete. So, I mean, they're force-feeding him targets. He's just fine. I took all the overs on his props. I think he's fine. Sorry, who was the other one you mentioned? I keep forgetting as you.
No. I mean, it was predominantly them. I mentioned Zachary Franklin, who, I don't know. I'm not enamored with that. I think, honestly, what everyone wants to know, and maybe there is no answer, is what now for Ole Miss? Wells, Watkins, Prescorn. Is it a combination? Is one guy the alpha? I mean, how do we rank what is a bunch of guys in the same price range?
There's a couple moving parts with Ole Miss, but I think we can make some guesses. Jordan Watkins had the best route rate last week without Trey Harris. he was injured to begin the year, so his stats are pretty depressed because he missed a game and then he was playing a limited role and he worked his way back. However, Caden Lee was on the injury report last week. That was coming off a game where he had a 13 target outing. I think tentatively right now it is Watkins or Lee. They're the top two. Wells is 3 for me. He's just had a pretty bad season and his routes have trailed behind these two at various points, I think largely due to injury. So I'm going to play this largely Watkins 1, Lee 2, close between those two, Wells 3. Mix in some pre-score and Antoine Wright. One thing they did was use more 12 personnel with Wright before some injury stuff occurred.
Does this affect Dart for you?
Dart came down a little bit.
Okay, that's fair. Trying to think what else really. I mean, like you said, this is going to open up a lot of salary here.
Yeah, I said jump. So now that I'm looking at this, Dart's projection came down and I still got more of him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not honestly shocked about that just because of kind of the situation of the total salary of the stack has come way down.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Trey Harris is averaging what is his receiving average? 141 yards per game.
Yeah, it's a monster.
He's like a 35% target share if you just isolate the games he's healthy. We remove that from the offense, which obviously affects the efficiency. That's all in the total in the spread. But that has to go somewhere. And when those replacements are 4K, the stack starts to look really good. Maybe Dart would be, I still think Becht and Hennigan are the cash guys, but I don't know. It's at least a conversation worth having now. Probably is more of a tournament thing.
Trey Harris is more potent.
He's an All-American.
Charlotte and New Mexico State's passing attacks combined. It's tough scenes. Yeah, let's go to FanDuel and see what is going on over there. Let's see. McMillan 10-4. No surprises. It's a lot of the same guys. I mean, you've got Ja'Cory Brooks. That's going to be an interesting one because Louisville, I watched them against Boston College. They were losing guys. Obviously, we saw with Lacey's situation. Do you think that Brooks can just on a volume standpoint, Clemson's killed teams and then they've eased off? Do you think Brooks has a path to get there?
Yeah, you mentioned one thing. Clemson's played no one competent since Georgia. They got rolled. The problem with Brooks is his target share is still not super high. He's actually, since Lacey, I guess, departed, he's been at 11 and 10 targets. I still wish that was higher, but he's only 9K on FanDuel specifically. That's not really that expensive. So you can play him, I think, even in game scripts where Louisville's trailing. That should only benefit him.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think really. It feels like of the three positions, that wide receiver from FanDuel to DraftKings is more mirrored. Presley for Oklahoma State is a guy. Let's see. Let's go to ownership. I'll sort by ownership. See who else is popping up. No surprise, Noel, Watkins. We talked about the cheapies. Love it. Caden Lee. Roderick Daniels. Okay. That's a guy that we haven't. And Giles Jackson. What do you think about Giles Jackson? You talked a little about Washington earlier in the show. Is Giles Jackson someone you're getting to?
Yeah, he's awesome. That passing attack is just really efficient under Will Rogers. This should be a pretty good game for them. That could be a shootout.
Yeah, that is a sneaky game. So wide receiver value breakdown. Obviously, we've got the Ole Miss guys that we've talked about. It seems like Marsh still factors in. You're not going to be devoid of options on either site. Michigan State and Ole Miss, I mean, are those the best pay down teams for wide receivers?
I think so.
Iowa State, but those aren't true pay downs. Those are just like super good mid-range.
Yeah, exactly. Extremely good mid-range.
Yeah. 56. All right, let's see. 5,600 and under for a flex. Let's see what we can find for you here.
Yeah, you'll have to read me the guys. Wait, as we got this Trey Harris news. Yeah. I thought he was going to play, but I thought he was going to be limited, which is where we had him in projections. Oh, so now I got to figure my life out.
All good. I'm gonna see what we can get here. 5,600. You got what? We didn't talk about Surratt. What do you make of him?
I think if you're playing Indiana, he's the very clear stacking option. He has like a 95% route rate. Everyone else is mixed like 40 to 60%. And they've beat the absolute snot out of teams. So I think there might be like an untapped ceiling for him if a team ever remains competitive. We've yet to see it, but who knows? I think it could happen at some point.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm going to go with I think Michigan State has a chance today to win.
I don't disagree with that.
I think it's a sneaky bad spot.
I think you and I both really like their coach.
Yeah. Okay, this is a good question. Who do you pair with Hennigan?
Rock Taylor's number 1. Demir Blankhamsey number 2. That's about it. I mean, their wide receiver 3 plays a lot, Kobe Drake, but he's just not been as active, at least of late. On the year, you look at the targets per game, Rock Taylor 7.6, Blankhamsey 5.9, Kobe Drake 5.3. It's just everyone's targets have risen over the last 4 games except Drake. He's fallen to 4 exactly. So maybe he's a buy low. I could be talked into that. I don't know.
Higgins or Noel? It would be Noel, but you have 2 super good options.
Yep.
Who's going to win the Heisman? I think they're going to give it to Travis Hunter.
He's who I think should win.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know who else would win, to be honest.
Genty.
Yeah, but he's not going to win.
You don't think so?
No. People don't even know who that is.
Genty?
Yeah, and he plays on blue turf. They're not giving it to a guy who plays on blue turf. He had another 30 carries last night.
He sure did.
He sure did. I'd give it to Genty.
I think Hunter deserves it more than Genty, but I feel like we're splitting hairs a little bit. They're 2 awesome players, both doing historic things too. But it's hard not to give it to the guy that plays he won, I think he was last week or the week before, offensive and defensive player of the week.
Yeah,
in the Big 12. Like, that is unbelievable.
Peyton Thorne.
He could win the anti-Heisman.
Yeah, if there was a non-Heisman, he would be on the podium. Was Surratt the answer? Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really nice mid-range play there. You've got some good value. Best cash wide receiver under 4K. Let's see.
Flip a coin on the Ole Miss.
I mean, yeah, you're
if
getting
it's under 4K, it's Caden Lee.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. That's by default because it kills Marsh and it kills Wells and it kills Watkins.
Yeah, if you need to do under 4K, that's the answer.
Yeah, it's him, or I guess Foster would be runner up, but I don't even like that.
Okay, I went through my receivers now.
Okay.
The expensive ones I got more of with the addition of really cheap receivers were Restrepo. We didn't talk a lot about him, and Tez. It was not McMillan. I still came in with just 6% McMillan. I understand why for both of them. With Restrepo, I mean, it's kind of just like 2 blowout situations where, like with Ted, it's kind of not quite as bad as the Colson Loveland thing, but what's their scoring expectation? Miami could put up like 50 points. Oregon, I don't know if they put up 50, but they have like a 40-point ceiling. What is Arizona's ceiling against UCF? I guess UCF did fire their DC this week, so maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. It's just there is a stain on my mind, which was the Northern Arizona game and seeing them shut down that offense. And they've been shut down so many times this year. Maybe I'm just biased against that offense at this point. Wow, I only got 6% Marsh. That is
interesting. Man,
I want to bring it up just because like I don't want to be super overexposed to anyone that's 4K and below.
A couple questions here. One, do you have any interest in this Memphis backfield? It looks like they're getting some reinforcements there, and Brandon Thomas might be out. Do you care about that situation?
Yes. If Brandon Thomas is out, I would have more interest in Anderson.
Okay.
Is he out? Do we have that confirmed?
I
need like 8 screens for this show.
Yeah, I haven't seen it confirmed, but
there is a report that he's out from the terrible unabated account.
It's hard to keep track with all these guys. All right.
Brandon Thomas is out.
Okay, he's out. So there you go. A little.
I just never trust whatever that account tweets anymore. Since they sold it to unabated, they've been horrible.
If Brahmer plays, do you care about that for Iowa State?
Not a ton.
Not a ton.
I mean, he's been playing all year long, and it probably only helps Higgins and Noel if he's out, but. I mean, their target shares are so crazy, even with him in. Like maybe he's probably not cheap enough to throw a dart on with all the value we have. To sum this up, I don't think it matters a lot.
Do you like Rosmer? We've talked about he's gotten better as a pay down option at quarterback.
They're throwing the hell out of the ball. So what I think of him, I don't think matters a lot. You could play him as a tournament option. I don't know if it's the best way to go, but it's there. You could do it.
I really can't believe how often they're throwing.
Me either. What happened? Like what changed with their offense where they're like, all right, this is what we're going to be now.
I don't get it. I have no answers. Steve McGee, member for 42 months. That's what I'm talking about. $8,600 last guy in for a tournament. Let's
86.
Yeah, you got McMillan if you want him. I'd take him or one of the running backs.
What's Taj's price? I forget.
I was about to say that. So you can get him. You can get McMillan, you could get Darius Taylor, or you could get Taj Brooks. All of them work. Now, if you meant I don't know if he mentioned he mentioned, DK. There you go. So that's definitely where I would go. You have really good options up there.
Yeah, agreed.
I wish I had your problem, sir. We didn't talk a lot about betting today, but our man Mike behind the glass put it in chat already. If you're coming to hang out, no better time. Come over to Odd Shopper and join the marketplace. Matt's got a Discord. I've got a Discord. We're hanging out. We're dropping plays. We're updating this news, hitting live bets, sweating out games, all sorts of fun today. It's a great betting day. It's also the Breeders' Cup. So if you wanted to gen on some horses, we can do that as well. But those links are there. Just good times all around. We got a couple minutes left, so we'll take some questions. What do we got here? Star Thomas, sure. Evan Stewart.
He's fine. I love Evan Stewart. I took overs on his props.
There you go. And it looks like, I believe Johnson's not playing on Michigan.
He's out.
Yeah. So that helps because that guy, if I know the name of the cornerback, that means he's very good. That's a thing. Arkansas running backs. Any interest in that situation?
Braylon Russell, I think, is sprinkle worthy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really want to do that. Arkansas the points today.
Sorry?
No. Someone was saying they're betting Arkansas today. I don't hate that. I would hope Ole Miss could get it done, but at the same time, they've lost multiple games they shouldn't have. So I'm not gonna freak out about that. Pre-scoring good value with Harris out now. Yeah, I think all the.
Yeah, I'm trying to bump him. It's going to be hard. I don't have any time left.
Short breakdown of Ohio State versus Penn State for Showdown. I mean, you think it's just going to be a run-heavy attack for both teams?
I have Ibuka as my most owned captain, pricing largely. Tyler Warren second, Jeremiah Smith third, Will Howard fourth, sprinkling of Harrison Wallace and Carnell Tate. And it looks like, for the most part, mirror that in flex. Aller is my least owned expensive player, followed by Katrin Allen and Trevion Henderson. I don't know why. I didn't spend a lot of time on that because of what has happened on the main slate.
Lee versus Carpenter.
Lee.
Ooh, this is Jordan James or Will Howard. That's kind of weird.
Will Howard.
Yeah, just because you're probably, I mean, I would assume that means you have wide receivers for Ohio State. You want to connect them. Ward or Gabriel in a tournament. Honestly, they're both elite plays. If you have the money, just go get Ward.
I agree.
Thoughts on a stack of Georgia?
I think it's fine. Contrarian option. I don't know if you need to go there, but Beck has a huge ceiling.
All right, let's see. We've got Overmeyer and Jackson.
Overmeyer's the backup UTSA tight end. Who's Jackson? Jackson's a very generic last name.
Yeah, let's see if we can figure
Daniel
out.
Jackson? No, wait, that's not the same price point.
No. It can't be that. It's okay. It's those two, Daniel Jackson.
Oh, it's a 2v2.
It's a 2v2, sorry. Or Thomas for UTSA and Surratt.
I think the first one.
So
Cardenas is out for UTSA. That should, whatever that dumb receiver situation they have going on, should not affect Thomas.
Jake Swales, I hope I didn't butcher your name, friend. If you're right, we need you to come back next week so you can take your victory lap. Florida upsets Georgia today.
I bet Florida, not on the money line, but
It's come down.
Yeah, like 3 points, but that is so I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that means you
whoever said
lost.
that in chat means your prediction is already wrong because I bet it and got closing line value, which means it's an automatic loser.
You're not wrong. It's been a CLV graveyard, but you know what? That's what you want to do. Kelly versus Boston on FanDuel.
That's a really hard one.
Boston.
I think it is Boston.
It's close, though. It's really close. And again, honestly, that's where the data, it helps so much when you have some of these situations. You want to bounce around. Obviously, not only you're able to generate and run sims and all that stuff, but even just getting the projections, fill in the gaps. You can run your 2v2s. You can check out leverage. You can find those things. It makes all the difference. Friends, we did it. I didn't break the stream.
My CSV is in if there's any more questions.
Oh, look at that. Well, we'll take a couple more questions then.
Well, it's not tailored to the contest that I'm playing, which normally it is.
Well, it's all deadly. And let's, please, for the love, let's get over 100 likes here. It really helps us out. And like I said, me just not crashing the show. I can't wait till I find out that it turned out we streamed this to nobody and I've just been answering like AI questions the whole time. That would be very unfortunate. Can you play Hennigan and Mario Anderson in the same lineup?
Yeah. Let's see Anderson's targets. Holy smokes. 5 per game. Yeah. That's great. That's a good target share.
Yeah. Yeah, Georgia wide receivers.
Oh, shoot. I need to fix FanDuel.
Yeah, fix FanDuel.
I can do it. I just need to global swap Trey Harris now because it's too late.
Yeah, get him out of there. You got about 90 seconds. The heat is on. While you do that,
I've been in way worse situations than that.
Yeah, this is amateur hour. You've got, I mean, if you had to play a Georgia wide receiver, who would it be? Lovett?
Yes.
Okay. Caleb Douglas or Loveland?
Douglas.
Did you get, actually, this is a good question. We kind of talked about him, but not really. Do you have any Avery Johnson?
I have exactly, I played 150 lineups. I have 3 of them with Avery Johnson.
Okay. So
I can actually answer every question specifically, which I would love to be able to do at the start of the show, but the injuries do not permit.
No, they don't. But we do the best we can here. Should I stack Higgins and Noel with Beck or take out Higgins and play Johnson? I mean, you can't really go wrong there. I don't mind the QB +2 for Iowa State, though.
Agreed.
Jackson or Noel? It would be Noel for me.
Agreed.
Daniel Jackson or Rock?
Rock.
Yeah, I would agree. Friends, we did some really good work. You feel good? You feel like you're going to win?
I don't know. My CSV is not as fine-tuned as it normally is, but I don't have any inactive players in it.
You know what? That's a win in itself, friends. And on that note, we're going to bounce on out of here. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets on Twitter. And again, Discord. We are there. Get involved. Join us here at Stokastic as well. The Mill promo is below. And on that note, friends, good luck. Enjoy. Let's see some Stokastic avatars at the top of the board once again this week.